And so I started working at the front desk at Orange Theory, like crazy hours, like 4:30 a.m. to like 8. And then I would go to my other job.
What was like a memorable experience or like a success story from your career that like again like reaffirmed why you do what you do?
When it comes down to it, it's like what the science is saying.
Going with the whole nutrition, exercise, that sort of a thing, do you feel that one aspect has a little bit more weightage over the other, like diet versus exercise? And if so, why? Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the NextGen Podcast. My name is Meghna. I am a senior at UC San Diego. Today's guest on the podcast is Rebecca Pennoyer, who is a fitness and nutrition coach with over a decade of experience in this industry. She began her career with Orange Theory Fitness and expanded to fitness and nutrition coaching to further support others in their path to leading a healthy lifestyle. Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us today on the NextGen Podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So, on this episode today, we'll be talking about heart disease, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, as well as understanding the path to becoming a nutritionist. Upon like recent research, I learned that according to the CDC, which is the Center of Disease Control, the United States is a leading country when it comes to death caused by heart disease. And I don't think that that is something that we should be proud of. So I hope by the end of this episode, we can have actionable steps to prevent and or manage existing disorders. And again, just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This podcast is purely perspective and it's just like our personal opinion. So before you take everything word for word, please consult a doctor. And also, this podcast is not sponsored by any brand or a particular product. This is just mainly to help you guys by sharing valuable information. And that is what we hope to seek to do from these episodes. So let's get on to it. Before I ask you like health related questions, Rebecca, I just wanted to learn like more about your journey. It's quite a unique journey because like from Orange Theory to nutrition and fitness coaching with a background in business, was this like prior to like college and like that type of thing, or did you do anything in college that inspired you to like pursue that path?
Um, well, honestly, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I went to college. I kind of bounced around at quite a few majors and landed on business just because it seemed like all encompassing. So, like, if there was something that I knew I wanted to do outside, I feel like it kind of paved the path to like open those doors.
Mhm.
So I worked in the business world for a couple years outside of school, and I didn't really love the roles I was in. I was in finance for a little bit. I did marketing. Um, and so that kind of led me to look for opportunities outside of the business world. And so came along Orange Theory, and I had never heard of Orange Theory at the time, and I just applied for a job, something I could do on the side of my current full-time job. And so I started working at the front desk at Orange Theory, like crazy hours, like 4:30 a.m. to like 8. And then I would go to my other job for my 9 to 5. And then that kind of just like sparked. I mean, I guess I always have played sports my entire life, so I've already always had an appreciation for fitness. But not until I had like worked actually in the fitness industry did that grow. And then after being with Orange Theory for now 9 years, like along the way, kind of just like sparked my own nutrition journey. And then from there, I was getting so many members like inquiring about, what steps did they take outside the studio. And that just kind of led me into like the world of nutrition as well.
Okay. So you mentioned like you did like there was not like something that you figured out like prior to college or like in college. So was there like a specific moment that kind of solidified your decision to pursue nutrition post grad?
It was the moment where it was like every single day working at Orange Theory, members would come up and ask me my opinion on what they should be eating and like how to, get to X, Y, and Z goals. And I wanted to be able to respond, with actual knowledge instead of just saying like, what I was doing. Like I wanted the facts and the science behind things. So I started by like reading so many nutrition books. Like I think I've read like every nutrition book at this point. And that kind of led me to then like get my certifications necessary so I could handle these questions better. And then from there, like start my own one-on-one nutrition client side of things.
hmm So you mentioned that you got like a certification outside. So how many years was that? And did you like have like any specific field of nutrition? I know you mentioned that you did like sports. So were you like looking for like a specific area of nutrition, or were you just looking for a general certification in nutrition?
So at first, I just got a general certification, and then I got one that was like a 6 month program that it was still like all encompassing. And then on top of that, I kind of specialized in plant-based nutrition. So that one was like another 4 to 5 month kind of program. So like, yeah, almost probably a full year of obtaining the necessary certifications.
Okay. And what was like your biggest challenge that you like faced in pretty much like your entire like career path? And how did you like overcome it?
I think it was just like entry into the field because at the time I had even looked into possibly going back to school to become a registered dietitian.
Mhm.
And at the time, the requirements for that were changing where they didn't currently require a graduate degree, but then it was like within the next year, it would require a graduate degree, which would mean I would have to go to school for many, many more years.
Mhm.
But then I realized that I didn't really want to work like in a clinical setting, and that's kind of the route that an RD goes through. And so when I looked into certifications for nutritionists, you could do more client-based work, and so I felt like that was the right path for me. I've still thought about the RD route, but it's like working in hospitals or clinics that kind
Mhm.
of turns me away from that type of work. Like I prefer to be one-on-one and kind of specifically work with people who have specific goals.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Okay. And I know that you still do work at Orange Theory because I remember my mom just
Yes.
mentioned it today that she was in your
I
class.
did see her today, yes.
So what is your typical day like with the nutrition coaching as well as just balancing Orange Theory?
Well, luckily I work really early morning hours.
Mhm.
So, I'll get to work 5:30 a.m., coach a morning block of classes. That might be, a 4 to 5 class block. So I'm out of there by like noon 30.
Mhm.
Um, and then so my afternoons are pretty much client calls, or I do get a lot of clients from Orange Theory. That's kind of just how I do my business, just word of mouth. And so sometimes I'll meet people at studios or coffee shops, or I'll even go to their homes because I like
Mhm.
to do initial consultations within a client's home so I can kind of like see their space, like what their pantry setup is, like their cooking situation, stuff like that. And people feel comfortable talking to you in their own home when it's
Mhm.
something is, like talking about nutrition can be an emotional thing. So it's like good to make people feel safe in that space.
Mhm.
So yeah, kind of just it varies day to day. Other than those like initial consultations, I do weekly check-ins with current clients. I might set up grocery shops. A lot of people don't know how to navigate the grocery store. And
Uh-huh.
so we'll go through and do a grocery shop together. So, yeah, those are probably the most frequent things that come up on my week to week schedules.
Uh-huh. And I feel like even when you like mentioned that you do like you go to like their homes or stuff like that, from that you can even like see like their general habits as well. Like are they active? Like do they own those type of equipment at home or do they go outside for them? You can like kind of just like tell the general their lifestyle as well too.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you really get a sense of like people's health priorities just by like stepping
Mhm.
into their home. So it is a great way. It's kind of like a nice barrier to break down that way too.
Exactly. So, I know you'd like started like the nutrition coaching and everything like a decade ago, and there have been like a lot of like new diets that have come out and like new just habits. So, how has like the field of nutrition changed since you started working, or and do you feel like there are any emerging trends and shifts that are yet to come or that have like shaped the way you currently work?
I want to say overall, there have been, as you know, like all these
Mhm.
random trends here and there. And those are the things that, like, year to year, people are bringing up. Should I do
Mhm.
this? Should I do that? But when it comes down to it, it's like what the science is saying. And having read nutrition books that are like older than all these trends, and
Mhm.
even ones that are like up to date with new scientific studies and whatnot, it's just the the answers are always the same. It's lead a whole foods diet. And so we kind of want to stick to those scientific studies as opposed to, like, what we see on TikTok the next day for those next, yeah.
Yeah, and that kind of actually like leads me into like my next like question. Like, how do you stay up to date with the latest research and dietary guidelines? Like, because like books also like take like years to get like published. So by the time like our current book is published, like the trends may have changed.
Hmm.
So are there like certain like articles or websites that you go to for research?
Yeah, I would say I've also like latched on to a lot of doctors and nutritionists who I really like the information they're putting out. And so that's a good thing about social media. You can follow all of those individuals, and like
Uh-huh.
they can get information out on a weekly basis as opposed to like waiting for their next book.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's a good way to stay up to date with things too.
Okay. And I know that you didn't like start off with like nutrition. So what advice would you give to somebody who is like currently considering becoming a nutritionist, or are there like any skills or experiences that you recommend that they focus on?
I mean, for me, it was really just starting to read books that interest me. I guess
Hmm.
my journey started by like, I wanted to educate myself on what the answers were, because sadly, like, we're not taught nutrition in school. Like, we
Yeah.
don't get any of that education. I remember having like a cooking class when I was
Hmm.
in high school, but it was never like what foods, you should be eating. It was like, oh, kind of like you mentioned, the dietary guidelines, but sometimes even those are not talked about as so great, like in
Hmm.
nutrition books that follow whole foods diets. Because like it still says eat like so much dairy a day, you know what I mean? Things like that. So it's kind of just me wanting to educate myself. And I would say if someone wants to go into that route, to
Hmm.
start there, because if you're not educated yourself, it's hard to educate others.
Yeah. You'd mentioned like a cooking class. I'd taken like a cooking class in like middle school, and we were like taught how to make like French toast and pancakes. Like it was nothing like really like healthy too.
Right.
So even with those options, if there's no like, hey, like let's make like something a little bit like healthier, or like that
Mhm.
option is just like not there.
No, or even how to like fill your plate. Like it
Hmm.
should be a certain percentage vegetables, grains, and then a protein. Like we were never taught simple, basic things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned that to be able to like help others, you also have to be healthy. And I know that you do like early morning shifts, like Orange Theory, and then I bet your day is like just like full. So how do you balance your own health and well-being while helping others improve theirs?
I'd say I'm a really like scheduled person, and I like to plan things out.
Hmm.
I know one of the hardest things to work with clients on is finding a love for cooking, because a lot of
Hmm.
people are like, I just don't have time, or I have a family, a household of 4 or 5, and everybody wants to eat different things.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like congregating all together. And my thing is, you got to find like, start with a simple base of like 5 to 10 recipes that your family will like, and kind of start from there and make it simple things like go to Pinterest and look at like 30-minute meals. And then once you get to know those meals, it makes it a lot easier to like prepare for those things. So you can kind of have a week laid out. Um, I love to cook and I love to experiment in the kitchen. So that's just like a passion of mine. So I don't see cooking as like at the end of the day a big chore. So that's the thing. So I kind of feel like I'm really prioritizing the way I balance all the meetings and classes and stuff throughout the week and making sure I schedule time, outside of work things as well.
Yeah, I'm like that type of person that like I get really lazy when it comes to cooking. That like 90% of the time I would just put like rice and I would just do like a curry and be like, here, fried rice. Like
Right.
90% what I do because I'm like, I'm just too lazy. So I
And
maybe
I have
I'll like
those
try
days
that out
too.
too. Like the
Yeah.
Pinterest and those type of stuff too. Because I'm also kind of picky. So I need like something different every day.
hmm I'm like that too. Like I don't always love leftovers. Like I feel like
Uh-huh.
there's some things I'm like, yeah, I get excited to eat this the next day. And other things I'm like, okay, cool. I don't want this anymore for like a
Hmm.
month. So and a lot of people are like that where they just like don't love leftovers. So it comes down to like make things that you could even repurpose. So if you like
Hmm.
batch cook of a certain vegetable one day and you use it in, like you said, like a curry or a rice dish, okay, great. Like the next day, put it into like a pasta stir fry or,
Oh.
repurpose something, part of something you used the day before for a different meal.
Hmm.
Mm-mm.
Okay, maybe I'll like try that out too. So what was like the most surprising thing that you learned when you like first started studying nutrition?
I guess just like that there is so much
Mhm.
that we didn't know, and like why would we know until we like do a deep dive on it. I think my number one was like there's so much sodium in literally everything. And
Yes,
it's
for
like
sure.
a jarring number to know. And it makes you start to realize that like we are an oversalted, like over sugared country, and
Mhm.
kind of makes you like take pause on like all the things you're putting into your body.
That is so true.
Hmm
And you don't half the time you don't even look at the drug facts on the back of like ingredients. Like we just never do.
Right. Yeah.
So
hmm
what was like a memorable experience or like a success story from your career that like again like reaffirmed why you do what you do?
I want to say it was probably the first client that I worked with because it was
Hmm.
like my very first one. So I was afraid to like make an impact.
Uh-huh.
Um, and she like this was years ago now, and she was one of my members at an old studio that I worked at.
Hmm.
And she even to this day like reaches out to me and shares recipes with me. She was someone who really disliked cooking and had like we did a grocery shop together, and she just was like so intimidated by the grocery store and where to begin. And she thanked me after that moment, like just helping her navigate like something we think is simple but not simple for everyone, to just like go grocery shopping and to help her plan for the week. Because she was like, it just comes down to having the healthy things in your house, and then finding ways to use those things throughout the
Hmm.
week that make all the changes. So I think it's just like the appreciation of even the small little educational tidbits that help people kind of take the next step, even if they're not like transforming their entire diet overnight.
Okay. And you kept like you mentioned like the grocery store haul a few times. So when you're going to the grocery store, like what are like some important key things to remember or certain products or items to like look out for?
I mean, mostly you just want to shop the perimeters of the store. That's where
Mhm.
like mostly the whole foods are going to be. So like the produce section, or even the canned goods section where you can get, beans, stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
any of the whole foods in the store, it's like those closer you get to the middle of the store, do you have like the processed
Uh-huh.
foods, cereals, candy, chips, things like that,
Hmm.
that you want not, I don't want to say stay away from, because I like to live by like an 80-20 rule. I think I mentioned that too when I was like responding in your questionnaire,
Uh-huh.
but like 80% of my diet is whole foods, clean, and then like 20% I'm, enjoying other things, because the more we restrict ourselves, the less successful we're going to be in the long term.
Okay.
So we can't like put 100% on any one diet. Like we have to allow ourselves to have things outside of that scope in order to make it a long-term like lifestyle change.
Mhm. So with the whole like 80/20 concept, is that like a per day thing that you eat like 80% whole foods and then 20% like processed? Or is it like per week? Like what's the
Yeah, I
part?
wouldn't put like a daily stamp on it, probably
Uh-huh.
per week. Um, like weekends, if you're a little bit more loose or you have like an
Mhm.
event to go through or an event to attend, you might have go outside of that 80%, things like that. So kind of varies. Some weeks they're like totally perfect weeks. Sometimes it rains here for 12 days in a row and like it's not a great week, right?
Mhm. For
Yeah.
sure. So what are like some common misconceptions that people have about nutritionists, or just in general, like the field of nutrition?
I think a lot of people assume that when you work with a nutritionist, all they're going to do is like, write you out your macros and
Mhm.
tell you exactly what to eat. But actually, one of the guidelines between a registered dietitian and a nutritionists are not legally allowed to write out specific meal plans for clients, whereas an RD can. So if
Okay.
you're working with a nutritionist, they can tell you, focus on these certain grains or these veggies, fruits, proteins, whatnot, but they can't prescribe you out a day-to-day menu.
Mhm.
Um, so that's a big difference. And I'm sure you've heard of, doing macro calculations, which is like the breakdown of your protein, fat, and carbs and what percentage works for your body. And I think a lot of people want or think when they work with someone, they have to eat within that frame. But everyone's kind of different in their approach. So it's kind of like who works best with you and who aligns mostly with like what your specific goals are.
Mhm. Okay. So that's it, like the questions, like just getting to know about like the field of nutritionists and just nutrition in general. So now moving on to like the health side and the heart disease and like that aspect. So what role does diet play in preventing in heart disease? And are there like any specific foods or nutrients that people should incorporate in their diet to promote heart health, or and just like what foods in general should just be like avoided completely?
So, all markers for disease come from high levels of inflammation, and inflammation is really coming from things like high sodium, high salt,
Mhm.
processed, super fatty foods. So, we want to, kind of shy away from things that overload the body with like excess sodium and sugars and those highly processed foods. It's kind of where I mentioned that a whole foods diet is the way to go because the more veggies that you eat, fruits, in fact, like the more diversity in your gut is an overall marker for your health and your risk of disease. And you want to be eating like an abundance of fruits and vegetables and good probiotics throughout the week because that's going to like up that count in your gut, which is only going to help you fight off diseases that could, transform maybe not tomorrow, but like years from now down the line.
So you mentioned like fruits and vegetables. Is it like a serving a day of each? Or what is like the proper amount that people should have?
That's kind of a number. I also don't want to put like a hard number on that because
Uh-huh.
it's like if all you can manage to have is a handful of berries a day, like
Mhm.
great, start with that. I do like to take a step with my clients, and that they should be incorporating a vegetable or a fruit with every single meal.
Okay.
So, like, say somebody is really into intermittent fasting and they're only
Mhm.
having one or two meals a day. So, they might be having a fruit and a vegetable with each one of those meals. But then someone who's like spreading out their meals throughout the day still want to try to hit a fruit or a vegetable with each one of those meals. So like the amount could vary, but it's just kind of like trying to get in the habit of incorporating that every time you sit down to eat something.
Okay. And the next question is not really related to like heart disease and that sort of thing, but it's like people can have like cravings for like sweet, spicy, sour, salty, etc. So is each craving associated with a certain deficiency?
I know I've read that too, actually. I want to say yes and no because I
Okay.
have read so many books and
Hmm.
none of them have really brought that up to be like a scientific hard truth that a certain
Okay.
craving is because of a certain deficiency.
Hmm.
I can't remember which book it was from that I read, but I can kind of circle back and find out if you want the information. But it was a book saying that we can transform what we do crave by transform or changing what we feed our bodies. Like our taste buds can actually
Hmm.
change. So if you come from a diet high in sodium and you start to
Hmm.
back off sodium over time, your body's going to crave less and less sodium. And then you might have like a little bit of sodium compared to what you're eating before, and your body thinks it's way too much sodium.
Okay.
And the same goes for sugar. So if you're having lots of sugar every single day, you're going to continue to crave that much sugar every single day. Whereas if you cut back on it, the cravings subside, and even having a small amount makes it seem like it's too much for you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is there like, I know you mentioned like if you cut down it like reduces your tolerance. Is there like a certain pathway or something that it activates that is the reason for this, or is it just the general idea of tolerance and withdrawal?
Um, that one, like something about like the pathways in our brain make us crave that because
Hmm.
they're, sugar is lighting up those like makes you happy, right? When you eat
Yeah.
it, but then it like wears off. That's like what they call the sugar crash.
Hmm.
So it's almost like a heightened feeling, but it's not something that's like sustained throughout the day. So that's
Okay.
something you can kind of manipulate by changing how much sugar, how much sodium you're eating throughout the day.
Okay. And you'd also mentioned like the whole 80/20 percentage. So, what are like your thoughts on like cheat meals? Because we can't expect people, like what you mentioned, we can't expect them to completely abstain. So, is like a cheat meal a day or like a cheat meal in a week, is that fine? That like, does it like spoil or help too much?
Yeah, and I try to have people shy away from saying cheat meals. Like
Hmm.
just put like those meals outside of that like 80%. So if you're someone who like I really need something sweet at the end of the day, like I haven't been able to like tell myself I don't need something sweet at the end of the day, then like that can be your little thing at the end of the day. If you've eaten it healthy all day long and you need
Hmm.
a piece of chocolate or whatever it may be at the end of the day, then start there and try to make it something that like isn't totally breaking the bank. If it's like a bowl of fruit with like coconut whipped cream on top, you know what I mean? Like something that's still healthy or like a dark
Hmm.
chocolate bar, stuff like that. Like, yeah, I mean, because you don't want to say like have a pint of ice cream every day if you need to have
True.
something sweet to fulfill those cravings.
Mhm.
So it's just kind of like allowing yourself to have those things that you want once in a while. But if like the narrative starts to get flipped where that's all you're having and that becomes your 80% and you're like, I had one piece of broccoli for my 20%. That's when we kind of try to like shift the mindset and
Mhm.
maybe start to be a little bit more specific with like what our meals are throughout the day.
Mhm. So when you're shifting the mindset, is it like a slow process or do you just like start off by saying, let's completely cut down like, from a pint of ice cream a day to like maybe a scoop or a half a scoop a day? Or is it like we'll just take it like little like step by step?
Yeah, definitely step by step because if we change too many things at once, then we're kind of set up for that crash and burn effect. That's why those diets like Whole 30, where they change things for 30 days, they
Mhm.
see people like fall right off after that 30 days and they just revert back to their old habits
Okay.
because they were changing way too many things at one time. So it doesn't
Mhm.
become a lifestyle change, it just became like a temporary change. So if someone is, want eating ice cream every single day, instead of
Mhm.
saying, okay, we're only gonna, do this on 4 out of the 7 days of the week, try swapping out the ice cream for something like a little bit better for the body, like I said, whether it is like dark chocolate or berries, and then like slowly implement those things. Cause again, those cravings will start to go away if we're swapping it out with something that's still equally sweet, it's sugary, but it has a better effect on the body overall. So baby steps like that can help make lifestyle changes.
Okay. And I know like with your background for like from Orange Theory, I know this would be like a perfect question for you. Like usually when like people go for like gyms to like build like muscle and maintain bones, they usually incorporate protein into their diet, and most people tend to supplement the protein through protein powder and protein shakes. But there are like some like recent research that says that there's like certain things in the protein shakes that are bad. So what exactly are those ingredients, like, and if you were to take it, what would be like the ideal amount of protein powder?
Yeah, I mean, not all protein shakes and powders are created equal, that's for sure.
Mhm.
There are plant-based protein powders and whey-based protein powders, and some people's bodies like don't tolerate one or the other, so that's kind of like a trial and error effect. I just tell people I fully support a protein powder if that's going to help you like kind of kick up your protein to the next level, whether you're throwing it in a smoothie or blending it into your morning cup of coffee, then totally go for it. It just shouldn't be your main source of protein. It's kind of got to be like, I was low on protein this day, or I just need something to drink after I go to the gym and I don't want to sit down for like a full meal, like a quick grab like that, knowing you're still going to fulfill like your main protein goals later in the day. Then I fully support it. But it's, yeah, looking at the ingredients for sure and opting for clean ingredients. So things that I have less fillers, less processed things, that are lower in sugar, lower in sodium, like those two big things we talked about.
Mhm.
So it's kind of just like scouring through because there's so many out there today. And like they all taste different.
Mhm.
So as long as it's something you like the taste of and you're going to just use it as a supplement, not as your main protein source, then it's totally okay.
Okay. And
Mm.
edging onto like the same thing, there's like superfoods and like superfood blends that advertise saying that they're providing like a balanced meal or diet. If you say you couldn't have like a whole foods diet that one day, could you supplement with those products? I know that there's like specific brands. I don't want to like say those names out loud, but like on the podcast, but they're like certain superfoods and superfood blends. So could you substitute with that, or should we completely just stray from consuming them?
Kind of along with the protein powder, it should never be, like your main source. But if it's something that you need on the go or you are falling short one day, then like I don't see why not. You can't grab for those things, but it shouldn't be made like a day-to-day habit. And it should like a superfood blend shouldn't replace actually eating fruits or vegetables throughout the day.
Okay.
Because a lot of those are going to be stripped of their highest nutritional value and their fiber content. And that's one of the
Mhm.
biggest things we get from fruits and veggies is their fiber content. And we can't really get that if it's stripped down to just a powder.
Okay. So you're saying that you should maybe take it in moderation and substitute it more with fruits and vegetables.
Yes, totally.
Okay. And again, like going with the whole nutrition, exercise, that sort of a thing, do you feel that one aspect has a little bit more weightage over the other, like diet versus exercise? And if so, why?
Um, I mean, I think nutrition weighs a lot more heavily because, as the saying goes, you can't out train a bad diet. And
Mhm.
there is a lot of truth to that. If you're in the gym several hours a day, but you go home and all you're eating is processed foods. Not that you've undone what you did in the gym, you're just not doing the inside of your body any service. That's why you hear all the time about like these marathoners or bodybuilders
Mhm.
who had a heart attack and they were age 38 or 40. It's like maybe we don't know what they were putting inside their bodies. It could
Mhm.
be a high inflammatory diet that led to something like that. So that's why being fit and working out in the gym doesn't necessarily equate to being healthy overall.
Okay, because that's actually like a common conversation that I have like with my parents, like which weighs a little bit more, and is there like a clear weightage? So that's the reason that I wanted to ask you because you have the experience. So going off of kind of like the same idea, if you have a focus of like weight loss as like an ultimate health goal, is it helpful or harmful, especially for those suffering from like chronic diseases such as like heart disease, diabetes, those sort of things, like etc.?
Like to start a fitness routine.
Yes.
I mean, no, it's just like starting where your body can allow. There's another huge marker for disease, and that's just like overall inactivity and being sedentary, which is a huge, problem in this country, in the world, actually.
Hmm.
We are so sedentary throughout the day. So it's just incorporating more movement throughout your day. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, go take a high intensity workout to see a benefit. If it's something as small as taking a 15-minute walk or, just getting up throughout your day, if you do have a desk job instead of
Hmm.
just sitting for 8 hours straight, it's things like that. Just being mindful to be more active throughout our days because our lives have become so sedentary. That's a number one start. And walking is by far the best level of activity, and everybody can walk, right? For the
Hmm.
most part. So it's starting small.
Yeah, so when you mentioned like the whole like sedentary lifestyle, do you recommend people maybe walk for a few minutes like every hour, every couple hours, so that it's not like you're doing like a big like a 1 mile walk or 2 mile walk at the end of the day? Do you recommend like
Mhm.
splitting it out?
Um, it's kind of like within your own schedule, right? It's what works
Mhm.
for you. Everybody's schedules are different and busy. So if that's something that you can change, or like if you can do a little bit here and there, great. If it's like 1 hour of your day that you get to go work out and that's all you can do, that's great too.
Okay. So like there's a bunch of like food allergies and like the sensitivities that are like going around, such as like gluten, lactose intolerance, nuts, that sort of thing. So how do they impact your overall health? And like, what are some like tips for managing them without compromising on like nutrition? Because you do need like fiber, you do need like a little bit of carbs, protein, and all that stuff. But if you were like allergic to like, I don't know if you were like gluten, like lactose intolerant or something like that, how would you like substitute that?
Well, I can't speak to all of it because I know some people have specific issues that their medical doctors might need to outline for them.
Mhm.
But if it's as simple as people who are like have a gluten insensitivity or same with nut allergies and whatnot, luckily there's so many like gluten-free options out there today. It's kind of just like looking over the ingredients to make sure it's not highly processed, but there's also like natural gluten-free options, like rice is gluten-free.
Mhm.
Um, Soba noodles are gluten-free. They have a lot of things like that, just are naturally gluten-free. So it might be like limiting to those options that work for people that have those limitations. Same with nuts. I know that's a hard one because it seems like it says nuts are everywhere, right?
Mhm.
So kind of avoiding, spaces where nuts have come in contact because you can still get protein even if, you can't have anything that nuts are in and stuff like that. So it's kind of finding what works for you.
Okay. And if you're going for like, say, a gluten-free option, does that provide, or even like with lactose intolerant, like when you go for like the oat milk or those non-dairy based milks, are they the same? Like, do they provide the same amount of nutrients when compared to something that does have lactose or gluten or something like that in it?
Those two are not all created equal because some of
Mhm.
them can have a lot of fillers and additives. So it's kind of checking over the labels on the back. Like I love a plant milk, so I try to like find ones that are like limited to like three ingredients, like almonds, water, salt, or even some just have almonds in water.
Mhm.
So it's kind of looking over labels for that and also like what tastes good if that's something you're gonna eat. And people, you're right, people who are lactose intolerant, they have a lot of options for lactose free if they want like a cow dairy based option. But all of those plant milks too. And for people who have nut allergies, they have oat milks. They have like non nut plant milks too that are good
Mhm.
options.
Yeah. I actually did do like a non like lactose diet when I was like younger. So I would have those like, and I also have like a nut allergy. So I would do like the rice milk, oat milk, those type of stuff too.
Yeah.
So,
I've never tried the rice milk.
okay. Actually, like compared to like the others, I think that that was like one of my favorite ones because
Oh,
it was a little bit like
really? Okay.
sweeter. So
Yeah.
it had like that natural sweetness a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah. I know I can kind of envision that one being like creamier too,
hmm
with like
For
coming from
sure.
rice. Yeah.
So just the last question that I had was if somebody had to make like one change to like improve their diet, like what would you recommend or like what is like one piece of advice that you'd recommend for like the next generation when it comes to maintaining a healthy lifestyle?
Just to up your abundance of fruits and vegetables that you get on the daily basis and to start small where you can.
Okay. So that's it, the questions that I had. It was great speaking with you, Rebecca. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was so great talking to you today. It was good. I
Thank
haven't
you.
seen you in forever.